coverage on NBC. Little controversy earlier today. Loser Aaron Hamlin was named the U.S. flag bearer. They did it after a coin flip, and Shawnee Davis, who lost the coin flip, is not happy. I'm Jeff Biggs. This is NBC Sports Radio.
I can just tell it's going to be one of them slow computer days. Here's what the grand doctor said about curing all diseases in the world. Wait a minute. Computer's got to load here. Hey everybody, I'm Marky Billson, your voice of choice for a new generation of Tri-City sports fans. The name of the program is Tri-City Sports Now on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities. You know what we do? We own the Tri-Cities. We've got the best guests, hardest hitting opinions. You know what I mean by we have the best guests? I mean, tomorrow I got Donnie Abraham, ETSU wide receiver, or not wide receiver, listen to me, defensive back from the 90s, who went on to play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New York Jets, record 30-odd interceptions. And you know what? He pretty much, I don't have the defensive pairings here, but he would have gone up against Pro Football Hall of Famer Terrell Owens when he was here and never lost to him. So I'm going to be talking to him, one of the great ETSU football players of all time. Would you call him the greatest? Possibly. I mean, you know, the accomplishments in the NFL, Earl Farrell had a nice career, certainly. But Mike Smith, was coach of the Falcons. I think he was coach of the year once. He wasn't an NFL linebacker. But other than that, there have been some other players who have made. Thane Gash comes to mind. I think Donnie Abraham would probably be the best of them all. So that's going to come up. But today I'm talking to Chris Lowe, ESPN reporter, known well in Knoxville, perhaps the most respected of all the Vols reporters. Guess what? He was in Johnson City all last week, and he was covering the Buccaneers men's basketball team. Story he's going to do on them come tournament time, he tells me. And we're going to find out about that. Plus, obviously, the recruits are in. They're all final. I got the ETSU list, got the UT list. I'm seeing UT ranked anywhere from 20 to 24th, I get. But the thing was, they supposedly had, and again, take these rankings with a grain of salt. Yes, I've seen Clay Travis come on and say, now it's apparent to win a national championship, you have to have top 10 recruiting classes. That's all well and good. I agree. But you gotta have top 10. Tell me what the top 10 recruiting classes are in 4 years. Because, as I said 4 years ago, Tennessee had the number 5 recruiting class in the country. Central Florida had the 73rd. How'd that work out again? When you learn the background of some of these recruiting analysts, I mean, a lot of these guys are people that just couldn't get a job. And I've written for Rivals and Scouts. So here, I'm damning myself, right? But they're oftentimes guys who, really couldn't get a job at the newspaper. They don't have coaching background. They run camps. I mean, you can see the combines and all that. But yeah, you just don't know until these guys actually play and so on and so forth. That's the way it is. I mean, let's face it. All right. By the way, before I go on to this, Clint Eastwood, did we get that right? Is going to be on Dan Patrick tomorrow? So I was hearing. Now, they were talking about the family member, and they named all their family members after cars. How National Basketball Association talked about someone who was named Maverick. Remember that? Someone was named Maverick. Okay. Well, what we have then is an entire association of, teams named after cars, and not good cars, cheap ones. You have the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Indiana Pacers. You have the piston engine. Wonder what I guess Mazda's now the piston engine. They didn't used to be. They used to be the rotary engine. You have the Charlotte Hornets. Still not a good car in here. You have, I guess, the Hudson Hawk for Atlanta. Good car, not a good team. And who else do we have in the NBA named after a car? I guess, has there been a car named the Warrior? I don't know. There was the 455 Rocket of Houston Rockets fame, and all this with the Oldsmobile. But yeah, the Trailblazers. I guess you could get the Chevy Blazer or something, but that's a little, the Bobcats. I guess we don't have the Bobcats anymore, but yeah, they were, the Mavericks, certainly. And thankfully there's no, I guess, Hyundai Laker or something like that. But yes, there is an inordinate amount of basketball teams named after cars, and bad cars at that. Anyway, what we are going to do now is get to Marky's monologue. The Winter Olympics begin today. Opening ceremonies, which are never all that interesting, to tell you, in my opinion. I guess when they did the Olympics 2 years ago and Gisele Bündchen walked down the aisle, that was interesting to me, sure. But, sorry, Tom, I'm not trying to, don't think it'd have much success either, But over the years, the Winter Olympics have taken a hit from some media types. I can remember Brian Gumbel going on and talking on and on about how it was the Summer Olympics that were the big deal. But I prefer the Winter Olympics. The excitement of hockey. The beauty of figure skating. The shock that there was once a Jamaican bobsledding team. They still have that? Now speaking of Olympics, I've attended one Olympics game, or one Olympics, I shouldn't say not one Olympics game. I actually attended several events there. It was in Atlanta, 96, Summer Olympics, not the winter ones, but the summer. I was in the stands when Carl Lewis won his 9th gold medal. Been to a lot of sporting events in my life. That is probably going to go down, I would say, as the most historic event. Let's just say I would go or cover the Super Bowl, all right? But it's played every year, and really its interest is pretty much American. Carl Lewis's 9th gold medal, that's a record that has worldwide appeal. It's not an everyday, but I was there, Carl Lewis, 9th gold medal. That's one of sports' great moments in history. And would I put it over, I don't know, being a little kid and watching the Steelers win the Super Bowl and getting into sport? Probably not for my own sake, no. But yeah, from the objective standpoint, I'm never going to go to a bigger sporting event than that. Carl Lewis winning his 9th gold medal. What would be, bigger? But I could tell you this, I would have traded that, if you want to talk about something bigger or more historic, I would have traded that, going to that, to being at the 1980 Winter Olympics in Lake Placid. I would have been 8 years old. I don't know exactly what I would have remembered. I'm sure I would remember some stuff. But yeah, that's where seeing, USA 4, USSR 3, certainly. I would have rather have been there. I would have rather have been in Salt Lake City in 2002 when Mario Lemieux won the gold medal and led Canada to their first gold medal in 50 years. Think about that. There were no Canadian gold medals up until 2002, and dating back to 1952. The Americans won the gold twice. We all know about 1980, but I'm still... Nobody talks about... You want to know the most underrated sports team of all time? 1960 USA Winter Olympic hockey team took the gold. And this was an era where you'd have, maybe one guy from Boston in the NHL. That would be it. In terms of, it was distinctly a Canadian league. In terms of participation, 4 of the teams, obviously, were in the United States. There are so many great Olympic hockey moments that I can recall. 98, Dominik Hasek, the Dominator, and just, dominating for Czech Republic. And then there was the controversy, speaking of Canada, why it had been 50 years for them to win the gold medal, when there was that shootout, and the Canadians didn't send Wayne Gretzky out there for the shootout. I know he was at the end of his career, but come on. That's Willie Mays didn't pinch hit in the 9th inning of the 73 World Series. No, you've got to do that, Of course, it was 8 years ago, Sidney Crosby took home the gold for the United States with his game winner in overtime. And then 4 years ago, TJ Oshie going on and on and on, time and time again in that shootout. Really? You don't have to use different shooters and all that? I thought they did back in 98. No, you don't have to use different shooters now. And Oshie, on and on and on. I mean, that was drama to behold. Olympic hockey is the best hockey. It's played on a wider rink, 20 feet wider. So there's more free-flowing action. And why the National Hockey League does not try to phase in larger rinks, I'll never know. I understand why, so, okay, we're going to, expand all the rinks to 220 feet from 200. I understand why you don't want to do that. Be a monstrous undertaking, and if it could be done in some places. But when a new arena is built, why not have the larger rink? To me, it makes no sense that you don't. I think it's the idea, the Canadian, again, impact in the NHL. And, Canadian hockey is always said to be, especially the English Canadian, just, harder hitting and so on and so forth. But anyway, this year, first time since 94, there won't be any NHL players in the Olympics. And I'm curious to see how that'll affect interest. I mean, when I went through some memories here, I was remembering NHL stars excelling in the Winter Olympics. But then again, there's, Mike Ramsey in the 80, USA Olympics team as well. I don't think it'll help that isn't the star power in this year's Olympics on the hockey team, but fans love a winner, and they love an underdog too. So if the Americans make a run, there'll be interest. And there will be interest. The amount of people that tune into Olympic hockey games, it's not the Super Bowl, don't get me wrong there, but it's huge. Let me give you an example. Now, there wasn't a Cold War backdrop. But when Sidney Crosby slipped the puck past Ryan Miller to win the gold for the Canadians back in 2010, more than 27 million people in this country were watching. I mean, it was the most watched hockey game, one of the most watched sporting events of the year. That's better than what the World Series does. 27 million to see that gold medal final between USA and Canada 8 years ago. But it's more than that. 80% of Canada, this might not be that big of a surprise, but 80% of Canada tuned into that game. Think about that. It was the most watched game in 30 years. That was the gold medal game, not the semifinal. People forget the victory in the 80 Olympics over the Russians. That was the semifinal game. The gold medal game was USA beating Finland. That was the most watched hockey game in Olympic history with 32 million viewers. That's not that big of a surprise. Anyway, the point is, if America goes on a run, we'll be watching. Now, by the way, this American team, you might not see, the Ryan Millers or the, American star, the TJ Oshie's on it. But what you will see are players from all over the country participating on the USA Olympic team. Not just the traditional, hockey hotbeds of, say, Massachusetts and Minnesota, which is traditionally where the players, come from. But it's really expanded in these days to all over the country. That's one of the reasons I say I want a new arena in the Tri-Cities so that Tri-Citians can start to, their kids, play hockey. There have been some guys, Jake Malzis, I remember, that Ice Falls had a guy from Kingsport I remember writing about. But, these guys had to travel long distances to play because there's no place to play around here. And that means that this area isn't very cosmopolitan when it comes to sports, in my opinion. Oh, you've got baseball fields and all that, but, your Buffalo Valley Golf Course, we can't have that be a bunch of rugby fields. Think about it. But even with that, there's a regional flavor, let me just say, to this year's USA Olympic team. Garrett Rowe, he's a scrappy forward, 5'8". Garrett Rowe is a native Virginian. Now, full disclosure, he's not from Wise here. He's from Vienna, which, if you don't know, is a D.C. suburb, okay? Yeah, that part of of Virginia. And I realize that, compared to the Tri-Cities part of Virginia, let's just say Bristol or whatever, Bristol, Virginia has about as much in common with Vienna, Virginia. I get it, as, say, Irwin does with Memphis. But you know what? Irwin and Memphis are both, even with 3 grand divisions, part of Tennessee. And Vienna is part of Virginia, so Garrett Rowe is from a neighboring state. Brandon Maxwell, he's a goalkeeper. I guess goaltender is what we should say. Goalkeeper is more of a soccer term. Goalie, that's more of the hockey term. Brandon Maxwell, he's from Winter Park, Florida. Yeah, Winter Park, Florida, just above Orlando. Rollins College. And while Bobby Sanguinetti and Brock Little both went to high school in Massachusetts, Saglianetti, he's a defenseman. He's from North Carolina, born in Wilmington. And Brock Little isn't from around here or even that close, but he is from the Sun Belt, Phoenix, Arizona. Now, Olympic hockey games, the tournament doesn't start until the 12th. And when it does, I'll be watching. I love Olympic hockey. Cannot get enough of it. It only comes around once every 4 years. It is the best hockey. It is the best hockey. And you know what else? I love to watch it. I love every 4 years. I look as much as forward to this every 4 years as, say, I do the Steelers and Cowboys. Even more to a certain extent. And the reason? Hey, I believe in miracles. I don't know if, the Americans aren't really picked to win the gold this year. But hey, by the way, Russia banned from the Winter Olympics. They were doping. They'll be in full force. I'll try to talk about this a little bit later on. Chris Lowe is coming up in 10 minutes. I'm going to talk a little bit about football recruiting when we come back. Tri-City Sports Now.
J. Ray's Heating and Air in Irwin is licensed, bonded, and insured. J. Ray's Heating and Air offers installation, service,